Here, welcome back. If you're using ServiceNow and want to build smarter, reusable automation, this video is for you. So in last video, we essentially went over flows. Today, we're breaking down subflows in Flow Designer. Simple and powerful. Now, subflow is essentially a reusable flow that can be called from other flows. So think of it like a function in programming. Build it once and reuse it everywhere. So in our last video, we essentially built a flow for priority incident notify the incident management team. So essentially when an incident is created or updated and it's a priority one, we're essentially sending a notification and adding a work note link to the context. What we're going to do now is actually showcase how we could actually create an additional incident task, but utilize subflows to essentially do this. So we can essentially create an incident task from anywhere, and we'll go over that use case in more detail. Let's go over what are subflows and the benefits of using subflows. Essentially, benefits of using subflows is it promotes code reusability. It essentially avoids repeating the same logic, keeps flows clean and simple, and makes updates a lot easier, essentially. When to use subflows? So it's ideal to use it when you got the same logic used across multiple flows, and the example that we go over will hopefully demonstrate that. You want to standardize processes, you want to make sure it's consistent throughout all flows. If you're doing a certain particular task, like creating an incident task, essentially you always want the same fields to essentially be created or used and notified. You need modular workflow design. When you would want to avoid using subflows, if it's a one-time or simple logic or very specific to that use case, it probably won't be reused anywhere. You might want to just keep it within the flow itself. Additionally, it also helps if you got a very complex flow in terms of performance. It might be better to break it down into subflows so you can have certain sections essentially just broken down. Now, how to create a subflow? So we follow these steps. Essentially, we navigate to Flow Designer, we click New Subflow, we define the inputs, the user, the message, we add action, and send notification, configure the logic, and essentially save the subflow. Then, once you create the subflow, you actually then need to use the subflow. So you would open an existing flow, add an action, select the subflow, choose the desired subflow, pass your required input values, save, and activate the flow. So let's go into our use case. So essentially what we're going to do in our scenario is create a reusable incident task. So multiple flows require an additional incident task and can be specific for the flow at hand. So instead of duplicating logic, let's create a subflow for creating an incident task, call the subflow from different flows, update once, and apply changes everywhere. Right, so let's go back into our main flow. So this is our main flow, priority incident notify management. As we said, it sends a notification once an incident has gone to priority 1, and it adds a work note to the context. But in addition to that, what I potentially want to do is create an additional task for setting up a war room. So in major incident management, essentially priority 1 incident management, you want all hands on deck. Potentially there might be a task for the incident management team to go and set that war room up with all the required and relevant parties. So let's go into creating our subflow. So essentially, as mentioned before, if we go back to subflow here, we click new subflow, and then it'll essentially bring up this screen. It's taking a bit longer than usual. Okay, so we essentially provide a subflow name. So I'm just going to do a quick test one here just to showcase how you would create a subflow. Okay, and then you essentially would be able to define your inputs, your outputs, and then any action you're required to do. So inputs is essentially what we want the user to add for kind of that consistent variables, and then outputs anything we want Subflow to pass back to the flow. If there's anything we want it to, like a true or false, or data itself coming from the Subflow, and then any actions. So let's go over a Subflow that I've already created for creating additional tasks, and let's walk it through. So essentially, we have right now, I want the current incident, so I want a reference to the incident record, essentially. When we create an incident task, we want to relate it back to the incident. So we want to make sure that reference is there. So we're going to essentially allow them to put the current incident, and we'll showcase how that works. But essentially, I'm asking for a reference incident variable here. Then short description, and you essentially could put any string you want for that specific flow. So what is the short description of the incident task? We essentially then want the assignment group. So what assignment group is this going to be essentially assigned to? And that could be tailored to the flow depending on what incident task is created. You want to change that assignment group to go to a particular group. And then also description, essentially you might want to add more context to what this incident task is. So those are all our inputs. Right now, we don't really need any outputs, because really the output for us is this action here, which is creating the incident task record. So what we do is, on the actions, we create a record, right? Table, incident task. And then essentially what we're doing is we need short description, input is equal to short description. Okay, and I basically can just drag this here, and that's how this has been set up. So description, input description, assignment group, input assignment group, incident, current incident. So essentially what this is doing is it's going to create the record based on all the inputs given from the workflow itself. So this is our subflow, right? Let's go back to our main flow and let's view this here. So we have our create additional task. As we can see here, it's asking for the following inputs because I've defined them in my subflow. So it's asked for the current incident, which essentially I was able to get the incident record here and just drag it into that. And as a result, it's always going to pick the current record that the flow is running on. Then I give it my short description. So now this is specific to this flow. So I'm going to say setup war room. It's always going to be assigned to the incident management team. So I've added that assignment group by basically clicking on the drop down and then searching for the group. And then description, I basically put in, the original incident essentially, and the current incident essentially will have the incident record here as well. So that's fine, but essentially want to put original incident, this is the record, and I could add any more context like set up a war room with the affected service managers as an example. Okay, so let's click done. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we could activate this, but in Flow you could actually test it right there and then, and this will create a record. So be very careful to not do this in production unless you know what you are doing and the expected outcome. But if you're testing this in subpods, this is a really good feature to use. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to click test, and I can pick any incident record. So let's just go with this one, and I'm going to run my test. So let's take a look at the flow execution. Okay, so we can see here that the incident was created or updated, sent notification, added work note to context, and it also created a additional incident task. And I can then open the subflow context to see the details of that subflow in terms of the execution details. Okay, so we can see here it's created the record, completed, and you can see this following task was created. So let's go take a look if I can find that. So okay, we're in our incident now, so we can essentially see that a work note was added, notification to the incident team has been sent as its priority 1 incident, and essentially if we scroll down we can see incident tasks, set up war room. Now, I've had to add this related task list, and essentially can be very easy if you just go to configure, related list, and then search for incident task, you will find it there. But we can see essentially has been set up. Now, if I open this record here, and while that's loading, I just want to talk about, so the priority right here is it's not 1, because our flow doesn't actually change the priority, it essentially just triggers if the incident is priority 1, but because we ran it from the test function, it kind of bypasses that, uses that particular incident to just run the activity, unless you put a check in the flow itself, and then it will do it true or false, but right now we're just saying create it essentially. So we can see here it sets up war room. We've got the sys ID of the incident. We might want to change that to actually add the incident number. That's something we could do to modify the workflow, but we can see here the incident reference record has been associated back, so I can essentially go back to the incident, and then I've essentially got my text that I've added in, and the assignment group is incident management. So let's just show this working by creating a new instance. So we probably want to make sure this is active. So activate. Now that flow has been activated successfully. So let's go and create a priority 1 instance. So I'm just going to add in following fields. Test 1. Okay, and we're gonna save this. Okay, our incident has been created now, so we can see that the priority 1 is critical. If I just reload the form, you see here, notification to the incident management team has been sent, as this is a priority 1 incident, and we got our notification or our flow there. And we could also see that the incident task has been created as well. Now, best practices. So it's always good to keep subflows focused on a single task. As you saw in the example today, we've just created additional tasks, kept it very short and sweet, kind of templated, use clear and descriptive naming conventions so it's clear what the subflow is required to do. Define those meaningful inputs and outputs. As mentioned, we've defined what we want from the incident task to be created correctly, consistently, all the time. So short description is required, assignment group, the related incident record, we want to tie it back so it's not lost and doesn't become a shadow task essentially. We want to document the subflow functionality, so always just kind of in the description of the subflow add what it's trying to do, what you're trying to do with this, and that is as soon as you start creating it, the first step is to define that description. What is the subflow going to do? And reuse your subflows wherever possible. So rather than creating those actions, you always consistently go back to those subflows. Some common mistakes to avoid essentially is creating subflows for one-time use only. If you're going to only use them one time, it doesn't really make sense to create as a subflow. So yeah, try when you're doing it to be very clear that this is going to be consistently used. It is something that kind of pertains for that requirement. Not defining proper inputs, that always could cause an issue. Essentially, overcomplicate the subflow logic. Try and keep it as simple as you can, and using unclear or inconsistent naming. So just be very clear with the naming when you're naming your subflows, so it makes sense exactly what it's going to do. So in conclusion, subflows are essential feature of Flow Designer. It really helps make it reusable, modular automation, and by leveraging these subflows effectively, you can streamline workflows, reduce redundancy, and essentially improve maintainability. So I hope you liked this video. Please give it a like if you do, and subscribe for more tutorials. Thank you. Bye.